Man of No Ego by Dimitar Petrov. Read by Jackson Holiday Wheeler. Chapter 1. Love and Intuition. What is a man of no ego? First, I would like to start by saying that in this book I share my perspective on a way of life, a way of living. A man of no ego is a person devoted to the path of not living through the egoic self. He or she is not a person without an ego. There is no such person. A man of no ego is someone who lives according to his heart and constantly seeks self-inquiry. This human being has finally realized the fundamental principle of life: love. How to get there? Well, there is no formula. As with everything else, each individual ego is unique. It is a self-image that we've built throughout our entire lives. It is a frame in which we can function as an individual, as a separate entity. If we remove the ego completely, we remove a fundamental part of the human experience. The path of self-inquiry, or self-love, is the path with which you can realize and integrate the egoic self. In the words of a wise sage, the question "who am I?" is the axe with which to cut off the ego. The ego is the I thought, and the true I is the self. If a person has a deep urge to expand, if he or she knows that there is much more to life, the ego must be integrated. It must be integrated so that it does not act as an obstacle for the achievement of those dreams. So be open and always ask yourself the fundamental question: who am I? When the ego is realized as such, we are the self and not the ego. And by focusing the mind on love, ego is no longer an obstacle. But let us leave the I thought for a moment and ask, what is intuition? Intuition is of the heart. It is the divine connection with the true self. It is the truth. Intuition is within every one of us. Following it is not an easy task because it is veiled, but this is the path of courage and expansion. When intuition arises, the ego arises as well. Thus, the fundamental choice has to be made. But the ego is of the mind, and knowing is one thing, but feeling is another. That is the key. A person who feels knows, but a person who thinks he knows. That is why self-inquiry is the basis of connecting with your heart. The more you come close to your original being and allow it to be, the more you come close to your internal light, your intuition. Following this inner voice usually leads away from comfort zones, and thus many aspects of our lives might begin to shift in order to accommodate our true expression. I would like to propose these 4 aspects of life: love and intuition, Chapter 1; balance and duality, Chapter 2; body-mind connection, Chapter 3; energy and food, Chapter 4. In order to live beyond the self-made image, it is important to integrate and understand these elements. We shouldn't get too serious here. After all, life is not a riddle to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. The natural process of peeling off our ego is gradual. We could potentially live a safe and linear life according to the ego, and why do we try to get rid of it? Isn't it just a tool that we can use? The answer is simple. We do not need to remove what was given to us. Creation makes no mistakes. There was never a question whether to have the ego or not. It is a tool indeed. We could rather realize and accept it. Being humble and careful to others is the first step. Ego emerges mainly in the presence of others. When we are in solitude, we experience a form of pure awareness. That is why loneliness is such a big teacher. Being truly alone with oneself will build a more coherent picture of your truest self. Relationships between people often start because of fear of solitude. The ego wants to clench to something or someone. If you allow solitude in your life and resist the temptation of being with another person just so you are not alone, then a relationship with your deeper self will begin to emerge. When you experience life only through the egoic self, being alone is easy, because then you are not alone, there's the ego. But if you are in love with your deepest self, then solitude becomes a way of learning and expansion. For a person who is very self-centered, solitude may be the way until he is finally ready to step out of the mind and enter the heart. Many layers of our personality will be peeled off. We need to be ready to let go. That is the way. Underneath all of them lies the universal essence, that which is in every one of us, that which is permanent. So the different levels of depth and understanding of life are based upon the ability to let go. Holding to an associated state of being is the ego. Such as the river, we need to flow. Vulnerability is a very important stepping stone in this process. It is a form of true expression because you allow yourself to be as you are. Only the egoic mind can interfere with such a pure state, defining it as weak and miserable. When you withhold your expressions in such a way, you withhold your true self. And why would you want to go ahead with this? The advanced human being is a being who has chosen the path of vulnerability and openness. Only then can we tap into our potential and inner strength. Only then are we experiencing ourself and not the ego. Connecting with your inner being is of big importance. You can begin to truly relate to someone else only when you build a relationship with yourself. The self is the key here, not the I. We exist as self but express through the I. This implies that we can connect to our way of expression and convey it through the ego, rather than govern it entirely through the mind, just like using a tool. But that requires a certain level of stillness. Such calmness of mind will allow for an expanded awareness, thus giving space for the true self to emerge. When we aim towards stillness of mind in the ever-present, we begin to align with our intuition. In that mind space, the intuition is clearly distinguishable from the urge of the ego. Often we are presented with two potential decisions, one of the heart and one of the mind. Which one is the truth? Well, the whole point here is to make the decision, and the fundamental question is, which decision will lead to love? And why do so many of us feel the urge to speak and speak? There's no stillness of mind. When we decide to speak, we commit to expression. But what do we express? Our ego? Our mind? Our love? Few are the people whose every single word comes according to their heart and intuition. In that case, the words begin to resonate with energy. Usually such a person is seen as charismatic. Similarly, why do we feel the urge to rush through life? Well, the ego needs a goal or achievement in order to justify its existence. Simply existing is not enough. So by following the urge of the eye, we step into the trap of constantly reaching towards goals. Before the goal is achieved, another one is created. This leaves the present moment unattended. The key here is self-inquiry. As you question the mind, where am I rushing to? The answer begins to emerge. Do you rush for the big achievement? Maybe, but in actuality, life has only one finite destination: death. And then the question is transformed. Do you really want to rush? Or do you want to be the journey itself? Life is as it is, a journey where at the end we lose our egoic self. So then the acceptance of death is acceptance of losing the ego. Naturally, when a person's death is approaching, he or she begins to slowly let go of the image of himself. That can be observed in elderly people, for example. You will find that these people have a diminished form of ego. But do we have to wait until the life experience is almost passed away? No. If we truly come to this realization, we can begin living the life of no ego. So, we all know life is magical, or at least we all come to this understanding at some point of the journey. And all is possible indeed. How? Through the realization that we, as divine sparks of creation, can tap into that which is ever present, our heart and intuition, and let go the temporary, the ego. When that is established within, we begin to manifest our own deeper reality. Even now, as you are listening to this book, you are interpreting it through the ego. We all function in such a manner. And when we come to the understanding that ego is also part of divine creation, or in other words, an aspect which is present, we can begin to build a positive relationship with it. It's not wise to go towards removing the ego, because what you are really asking for is an internal war. Why remove something that is inherent to you? Rather, realize the truth of it. The mind produces thoughts. If we empty our mind from all thoughts, we become fully connected to the present. Thoughts actually bring a certain fogginess to the perception of now. They could define reality, yes, but what is reality is manifested in the present moment, and thoughts either refer to future or past moments. There are no thoughts aiming at the present. The now is pure awareness. It is thoughtless. It can only be perceived. So whether through meditation, yoga, breathing techniques, or other methods, we could reduce the mental activity in order to connect to the present. The lower the mental activity, the more you become engaged with reality. Otherwise, your connection to the present moment is veiled and expression is filtered through the ego. If that be the case, almost every decision you take will come from the mind and not from the heart. And self-expression should not be filtered. It needs to be released freely. When there is a decision to be made, if the decision is taken shortly after, then there is a bigger possibility that it is based on intuition. If it is taken long after, then there is a bigger possibility that it comes from the mind. That is because intuition is timeless, while the mind needs time to arise. The mind is time-based, but we are not. Truly, the mind is not something to be destroyed. It is a tool. If properly attended, it will gravitate towards bliss and awareness. It is within us to decide whether we allow that or get in the way. Non-ordinary states of mind play a role in giving the individual a glimpse of a different reality, a different potential. Potential for what? Depending on the method and intensity, one can truly experience the feeling of separation from the ego, and even the loss of it. Transcending the perception of separation and individuality is a true miracle for the human being. In that state, we become one with ourself, the source. The obstacle is no longer there. We are in pure awareness, pure love. But can this be permanent? Or is it just a glimpse? Such as life itself, everything has a beginning and an end. So the key here is the experience. The non-ordinary states have a beginning and an end as well. One should not be dependent on the method of experience in order to experience the realization. So whether through meditation, yoga, or ceremony, for example, we can feel and know the separation of the mind. The more intense the experience, the more separation. In such state, we are no longer defined by the self-image. Then we are completely centered in the present experience. Any attempt of holding to the past or future will result into disconnect or disharmony. As long as we completely surrender to the experience, to the now, there will be no suffering in such a state, only love. And surrendering is a lesson worth a lifetime. So in order to deepen the experience, one must let go, one must allow. Then the ego will subside. But what will be left then? What will be left is the true self, experiencing itself, experiencing all that there is and all that will ever be. In that complete surrender, the merging of all, duality is experienced. Most of us base our sense of self on external momentary events. For example, the sense of self of a sports person is usually based on the fact that that person does sports well. But what happens if an injury occurs and the sports person cannot do sports well anymore? Where is the sense of self coming from then? As these foundations are not timeless, they are bound to pass away. So what happens is we go from one self to another and to another. From the successful self, for example, to the miserable and poor self. But there is something within us which is timeless. It does not come externally. That is the key here. When the sense of self comes from such a place of nothingness, then we can be the source of it, and a higher representation. What happens is we become the source, not dependent upon the external. And if we base this self on the immediate moment, the pure present, then we base ourself on the true manifestation of I. Furthermore, there is personality beyond the ego. Personality does not come from it. Ego only provides the sense of separation. Personality is an accumulation of life energy and experience. When we are born into the world, we have not accumulated such personality yet. It is built from that moment on, from the first energetic interaction. And if we base our feeling of self on the comparison with others, we base our existence on the ego. Comparing yourself is a way of measuring success and goal achievement, or in other words, associating more and more with the image of the self. But aren't we all unique expressions of divine creation? At some point in life, you may be perceived as more than others, but at some you will not. It's the fundamental balance of life. So do not compare with others in order to realize yourself. It is your life experience. The farther away you go from self-comparison and judgment, the closer you will be to love. We are constantly changing. With every moment passed, we become anew. Just like the cells of our body, if we accept change as a driving force in our life, we begin to surf the waves of life, rather than being hit by them. It's just like the wave. There's a low and a high. For a wave, change is ever present, and life is much like a wave. But our self-made image does not deal with fluctuations very well. This image wants to remain unchanged. One moment we can be experiencing reality through our heads, and the next, through our hearts. Such fluctuations are a threat for the ego. So the I projects fear. It becomes as if change is something to be feared. But it is not. Change is the universal path for expanding ourselves as human beings. Once you begin to flow with it, you flow with life. Sure, we can choose a safe bet in life and follow the safe path, yes, but when the time for change dawns upon us, the decision over fear has to be made. It is that divine leap of faith where the human being transcends itself and begins anew. Fear of change is actually fear of life, and this fear is just a thought. There is no such thing as fear in the natural state. It stems from the mind. One of the most valuable things in life is the effect you have on others. Whenever you give unconditionally, you let go of yourself, and letting go is something we need to practice. It is a way of bypassing the ego. Love is the ultimate test in that sense. The more you let go of the image of yourself and flow, the more love will be truly felt and allowed. And love is absolutely magical. It has the potential to completely transform one's life. To me, it is the basis of life. It underlines every action we make. But such as black implies white, fear underlines every action we make as well. If we look deep into the root of our actions as humans, fear or love will be there. Many of us decide to act based upon fear. For example, if the urge to speak does not come naturally or unconditionally, then you speak because of fear. And love is on the other side of fear. Every word we say should be coming from our deepest self and backed with integrity. What we say is what we project in the world. We could speak less often, and when we decide to do so, invest more energy into those words. This is integrity and charisma. When we are connected to our being, words come naturally. They're not planned. In this state, we project the self and not the mask. And when we are at balance, speech is also at balance. Words are aimed towards others most of the time. In that sense, we affect others. We want to be truly careful when affecting others, because we are affecting ourselves as well. We are all interconnected. That is why. We are one, experiencing itself as separate, and speech as a form of expression requires a high amount of internal energy. One who is overly speaking is overly releasing energy. Furthermore, speech can be overwhelming to other beings, so being balanced in that sense can be of great value to others. If there is one thing that I have come to understand as the underlying truth of existence, that is love. Love is the fundamental energy present in every aspect of life. It is the driving force behind every being, and fear is just the perceived absence of love. Fear is not the normal state. It is a deviation from the inherent state of love. When we come to this simple understanding, we begin to perceive life as an interplay of love. We exchange this energy with every connection we make with others. Whether it is a greeting or a kiss, this energy is being sent back and forth. It is a mystery extending beyond life itself. Words are not able to define it well enough. Love is not about requiring or attaching. That is of the ego. It is about nurturing, connecting, letting go. When we are in the love state, we are more forgiving to ourselves and others. In that state, we are at peace with ourselves. So love is an internal tuning. It is both inside and outside, and in our reach. This energy can be felt in the presence of oneself without external source. In other words, the source is the self, which is permanent. Love can be defined as a reconnection to the divine. It is our highest expression as human beings. A mind that is focused in love is focused in truth. We need to be able to focus the mind. This way, the mind is no longer an obstacle. When we are focused on love as the fundamental truth, the basic principle, life becomes a joyous experience. When our thoughts carry us away from love and into fear, one should make the realization and return to love. That is what an awakened mind is. If we base our existence on this principle, we will experience our lives as a manifestation of love. In every moment, in every interaction, one will have the foundation for his true nature to arise and express. The human experience is based on the reconnection with love. When this search comes to an end, ego rests, and we are at balance. But this quest does not always end with a romantic relationship. Romantic relationship is a manifestation of love, but not love itself. One could be in a relationship with another person and still experience an absence of love. This is because he or she has no love for the deeper self. So first, we must begin to truly love and appreciate our being. The biggest illusion of the mind is that love is absent. Love is ever present within us. There is only the perception of absence. This is the most important game the egoic mind plays. We are in love always. There is no out of love. So when we finally embrace love, then the search is truly over. And fear? Fear is just a projection. It does not happen by itself. We are the creators. There is no fear inside the thing we fear. It is our creation. This emotion is fundamental for the human being. Again, we could go so far as to say that at the root of every action in life there is either fear or love. So in a sense, there is no fearless person, such as there is no egoless person. But do we have to wage a war against fear? Not necessary. We rather need a deeper understanding, the root and meaning behind it. Why is it there? Does it serve a purpose? We need to build a healthy relationship with this manifestation, in the same manner as building a healthy relationship with our ego. There is no sense in trying to remove elements of our life experience. Rather, fully understand them, and once we do, accept them. As we've already stated, love is the opposite of fear. So if we so desperately want to remove fear, then the only way is to fully embrace love. Love is the supreme reality. It is the universal expression, the merging of all. We are all inherent of this capacity, but let us not confuse it. Love is simple. It is so simple. The more a human being is unburdened from the mind, the more he or she is open to love. If we do not get in the way, love is ever present within us. It is a state in which you are fearless. Ego will always try to make sense of love, but it is. There is no sense in love. Yet again, it is a state. Embracing love is the pinnacle of human expression. If this understanding is lacking, we as humans are playing the game of cat and mouse. Such interplay is driven by the egoic association and not the heart. Love is not about accounting, giving or taking. It is beyond that. Love is the all-encompassing human expression which cannot be comprehended by the mind. That is why thinking about love only shrinks its potential. It must be felt, just like a wave rushing through the body, sending all anxieties away and giving the sense of inner harmony. That is the feeling of love. To me. It might be something else for you. It is a unique experience. Pure love can be experienced in the most unexpected manner and coming from the most unexpected source. The presence of love can be felt as a result of kindness, for example. This could potentially trigger a body-mind response in which both physically and internally the person becomes flooded with bliss. Even a single eye contact can open the doors of love. Physically, a sensation could be felt in the back of the head and ascending along the spine. Every person is a unique manifestation, and every person is a unique form of love expression. What this means is that such is the universe as infinite and boundless. Our way of embracing love is unique and boundless. There are no rules here. Chapter 2: Balance and Duality. Balance is the universal law that keeps reality together. Without balance, there is no such reality. And in the same manner as the universe, we as human beings should seek balance always. Fundamentally, balance is the equalization of the opposing duality. Once we are free from the cycles, we are at balance. There is an aspect of duality in everything, good and bad, black and white, fear and love, truth and falsehood. In other words, what is true is also untrue. Both ends of the spectrum exist simultaneously. Understanding and accepting them as one can lead to the fundamental question, what is the purpose of it all then? Well, there is no purpose in life. There is no mission to be achieved. Only ego counts on achievements to justify itself. It is all an experience. The purpose might actually be the experience itself. In other words, to fully engage into the present moment as a representation of life. So simple and yet so difficult to embody. Yet another form of duality. This could also lead to the question, why do we even strive for truth if it is not the ultimate truth? There is no ultimate truth. And if there was such a phenomenon, it has to do with love. Each and every one of us has a light and dark side, as part of duality. Even the most pristine of beings has an aspect of darkness, because there would not be such concept as light if there were no darkness. In the same manner, darkness cannot exist without light. Why is this important? To integrate the ego, one should examine every aspect of it, including the darkness. Usually the mind leads us to believe that there is no such aspect within us, but the subconscious must be faced. It is comprised of accumulations and programs. We shouldn't be afraid to explore these depths, because what is stored there can emerge into our ordinary consciousness. It is a part of us. One must allow the existence of his or her darkness and acknowledge it. Again, it would be foolish to try to fully eradicate it from your being. The key here is realizing the self. The self is all that is you. You shouldn't go on fighting against it. accepting the darkness, accepting the light, accepting the ego mind, that is the way. This way, one can begin to truly accept and love himself, finally ending the internal war. Because can you fully become the self without all that is inside? No. The self should be achieved through acceptance of all. Duality in itself is the simultaneous allowance and coexistence of all. So by realizing the dualistic nature of reality, we begin to accept all that is. We become open. As an act, acceptance is not in resonance with the ego, but rejection is. The ego mind rejects so that it can be separate. The true self is of unconditional acceptance and love. This ability to be able to accept what is a true gift to humanity. If only we as human beings fully accepted the present moment as is and did not fall back into past or future anxieties. And we can. This is the point. A man or woman of no ego is someone who is open and accepting. To be closed is to be defined by the ego. To be open is to be shapeless and allowing. When we are allowing, we allow the possibility of all. When we are closed, we are one-sided. In order to let love enter, we must be open. Ego is the one that defines. If you believe that you know more than others, you are playing the game of ego. So be open and feel what is your own perspective on truth and truths. Fundamentally, the human mind is not capable of realizing the ultimate truth. That kind of knowledge is beyond the scope of our mind. It is boundless, while the human mind has clear boundaries. If we choose to think that we are all-knowing, then we are closed. If we are open, then we accept the possibility that we are wrong in the perceptions of the mind. Whenever we think we know it all, life comes along and teaches us the lesson that we as human beings are not capable of this. Because life is unknowable. When you believe that life is a mystery to be lived, you allow for magic to happen. And when you define it, you prevent magic from happening. If someone is of a defining opinion about a matter of life, then he does not allow duality. He is closed. We're not saying here that opinions of the mind are to be avoided. We should not cling to them. We are far, far more than them. The ego is of the mind. The mind will always strive to compute and separate itself as an individual entity. Therefore, these understandings must be felt rather than comprehended. And the key here is balance. It is within this balance between the opposing poles that the true self emerges. There is always a choice to be made, fear or love. We can choose either. Love is on the other side of fear. The path of fear leads to more and more disconnection. It is the path of ego. The path of love leads to unconditional love and interconnection. And the fundamental difference between the two is that love can only be experienced in the true reality, the now. There is no love in the past or future. Love belongs to now. On the other hand, fear is a direct connection to the past or future. There is no fear in the absolute now. Because the thing that drives us away from the present is fear itself. And fear is just a projection. So by choosing love, we choose our true self. By choosing fear, we move away from it. Fundamentally, if we make the decision to choose love, we let go of fear. The choice is ours, and that is the human experience. We as human beings can even switch from one reality to another. There are an infinite number of parallel realities manifesting simultaneously. So with every decision we make, we move towards a different reality. This implies the dualistic nature of all. What we think is real and happening is unreal and not occurring simultaneously in another dimension. So we must aim towards being fully in the now, as that is the only real experience of reality. We can ultimately choose our destiny. Even death itself can be a choice. The ego would never choose death, but the inner self might. What is meant here is that after the lesson is learned and the veil of the ego removed, the true self can become separate from the body. But don't be afraid. There are many lessons to be learned, and the biggest one, the lesson of love, could take more than a lifetime. So in order to stay away from death, if that is the decision, one should never stop learning. Life is a learning experience, and death the end of it, so trust in life, be willing to change and try to accept death, because fundamentally, it is part of life. Such as the passage of life brings death, death brings life. This is the way of nature. There is nothing to be feared. If we begin to trust life, intuition will take us where we need to be. Do not worry about life and death too much. Life will always be there, even when you leave the body. Embrace the lessons, and just like a warrior in battle, be ready to fully face them. You cannot run away from them. They will always present themselves in order for you to expand and evolve as a human being. The state of depression is one example for such lesson. And again, here the dualistic nature is revealed. In order to fully embrace love and life, one must fully embrace darkness and the reality of death as well. Expression is the opposite of depression, as per duality. The way we express ourselves in every moment is what we project into the world. It is our life. Often we find people being very serious in their expression, but seriousness is a form of emotional armoring. The expressions of seriousness, stiffness, toughness, are unnatural and simply a veil. Because if undisturbed, the mind will always gravitate towards happiness and joy, and these kinds of states do not allow for this to happen. Seriousness is not the natural state of being. If the mind is not in balance, we reach towards expressions like these in order to build a defense against the world. We do this subconsciously in order to protect our mind. The whole point here is not to define yourself with the mind. If we connect to the inherent vibration of deeper joy, present in each and every one of us, we become one with ourselves. Do not require such emotional armoring. If we truly realize that our expression is our life, and that it is in our hands, we become empowered. Expression is the key to beginning the process. Even now, as you are listening to this book, smile. Just smile from a place of deeper joy, without any reason. Smile even if you are deeply hurt, because joy is self-love. Joy is the expression of truly accepting oneself. And it can be experienced in every single moment of existence. We have that power. We can choose to feel joy within us. But what is the state of depression? It is a state of misbalance. To start balancing out depression, one must begin to fully express oneself and allow one's emotions to arise. Depression acts as a vortex of emotional energy. If it is continuously fueled, it will spiral and intensify even more. But if it is realized as such and accepted as a cloud passing by, it is diminished. One must transform depression, if that is the case, into expression, and balance the inward and outward flows of energy. When we feel low, we try to plan and predict so nothing can interfere and bring us even lower. We use the mind. But quite oppositely, we need to lower the activity of the mind instead. This slowing of the mind will bring our state to homeostasis. And again, balance is the biggest key. Depression can be seen as one of the greatest teachers in life. If we can accept it as such, then the suffering becomes learning, and the experience becomes self-expanding. It is a teacher, and a big one indeed. When the lessons of life have not been faced, but rather avoided, then depression will make sure so that the lessons are learned. We all go through this experience, as it is fundamental to life. In such a state, you are being challenged, whether you are ready to continue expanding and living. The worst of periods are usually the passageways to the next chapters of our lives, so we must embrace depression and do not fear it. We must rather allow depression and not fight it. When the lesson is learned, depression will subside. Our being is always aimed towards bliss, and when we are ready, we will go back to that. Courage is a very special form of human expression, and as such is opposed to depression. It is a form of balance. It is when you do the things that you deeply know that you have to do. You do not stray away or postpone them. You follow your intuition and act upon it. Courage and faith alone can propel the human being beyond any of the darkest of moments. And as the fundamental understanding that we are eternal is rooted deeply, we begin to act with courage. This is a feature of the balanced being. Our lives, as dictated by the ego, are achievement-oriented. This constant hurrying towards goals is actually leading us away from them. Yet another form of duality. The act of hurrying is the act of fear of not accomplishing the goal. If we are to manifest this achievement of ours, we must rather let go and create space for it to happen. By doing this, we accept the possibility of not achieving anything, and in that state we are not dependent on the outcome. We then become unattached and start to attract the desired outcome. The universe is all-knowing, and our desires and goals are already known. There is no need to push or obsess, but rather create a balance between letting go and the desire. In such a balance, our intentions are connected to the heart. Only then, the manifestation is rapid. This is the key here. And as they say, no hurry, no worry. Children are born in pure awareness. They have not accumulated the ego self yet. They are at balance. So in that sense, we must not teach the child, but rather learn from it. And observe them, the way they move, the way they laugh, and the state that they are in. Unconditional love. Fundamentally, when we are born, we are in pure awareness, in pure consciousness. And then as life continues, we shift towards a more ego-driven self-realization. But this is the key here. We must aim towards that initial pure state, rather than the state of more and more association with the I. The mind would like to think that we as adults are the main reason for children to be incarnated on Earth. But quite oppositely, they are incarnated here to be our ultimate teachers. And we become their parents in order to begin the biggest lesson of our lives, love. Our children are a part of us, such as we are a part of them. In pure physical terms, they are the evolution of our semen and egg cells combined. For the ego, there is no other I. But when this miracle of life occurs, suddenly this I is not the only one. There appears an external I, not bound to our body, but rather in an external one. There is an undeniable connection that even the mind cannot dismiss. awakening occurs. In this separation between internal and external I, unconditional love is manifested. The ego is subsided. So we are one with our children as we were for our parents. Children are indeed a miracle of life and a pure manifestation of love. Creating internal balance is impossible without a healthy body. The body is the basis of our human experience. But what does healthy body mean? It means the absolute optimal state of being in which you deeply feel there is nothing to be healed or improved. It means complete body-mind connection. If there is an aspect for improvement, then the body is unhealthy, and there is compromise. Every compromise with this optimal state is a compromise with the body's health. We as divine beings deserve that. If you feel that something is bad for your well-being, and you choose to continue doing it, you are unhealthy. That is what the majority of modern people do. They continue compromising. Complete health is complete happiness. There cannot be one without the other, and thus the importance of the body-mind connection. At some point of the journey, I do believe that we will come to the understanding that all that truly matters is love. Everything beyond that is an illusion, a play of duality, taking us away from truth. And from this perspective of love, each moment that we spend in illusion and misbalance is untruthful. But in order to be open and conducive, we must treat the body as a vessel of God and truly love ourselves. Chapter 3. Body-Mind Connection. Our breath is the thread which connects the body and the mind. For every emotion and state, there is a corresponding breathing frequency. The breath is key for unlocking our physical potential as human beings. With every exhalation of breath, we begin to die. With every inhalation, we become alive again. It has the most profound effect on us. When we begin to connect the mind and body through breath, we begin moving towards unity. Understanding breathing as a fundamental element rather than a function of the body is of great importance. Then we can begin using breath as a tool for self-expansion and self-realization. This is done in many forms and practices. One example would be yoga, where in order to deepen the practice, one is focused on breathing and breath itself. If we manage to establish this connection between the body and the mind, we can begin to change our physiology. Usually we think as if the processes of the body are not ours to control. All functions can be controlled and improved. We can fully heal and repair ourselves without the need of an exterior stimulant. But when the mind interferes, this process is blocked. We should rather let the mind vibrate in tune with the body. But it is easier said than done. Yet again, the choice is ours. Life or death, joy or happiness, health or sickness. So this connection is what governs our physical life experience. It is more than obvious that the patterns of the mind manifest into the body, either in a positive or negative manner. Having that realization, we need to awaken and deeply understand how important these messages are that we send to our physical selves. Back to the thread. We are addicted to breathing. We can look at breath as the ultimate narcotic. The effects of oxygen on the human body, especially in higher concentrations, can be compared to the effects of psychoactive drugs. So what this means is that we have an inherent addiction to this substance. then why would anyone want to intake any other substance when we inherently have the ultimate drug at our disposal? It's because almost all of us spend our lives in environments where the air is denatured and polluted. Such is the case for all modern cities, whether you accept it or not. Then the substance is not sufficient enough, it seems, and we reach for others. We can observe how our body and mind react when we breathe pristine air. Naturally, the body-mind connection is rebalanced, and we start the healing process. We start to connect to ourselves. Air is of most importance for human beings. We need to truly understand this. Breathing in pure air is what the human body is designed for. Every exception to this rule is an assault to the physical body. I cannot stress this enough. When we breathe air, we take in life force, prana, chi, etc. There is no way to establish the resonance between the body and mind without such a life force. As we get saturated with clean air, or in other words, normalized, we begin to connect to our emotions. We begin to unwind. Otherwise, the body and subsequently the mind are in a state of survival. As polluted air enters our being, the mind will always try to preserve itself, even at the cost of the body. In other words, our ego mind is capable of propagating this state of physical debilitation and bodily sickness, as long as the ego is preserved. But we are not the associations of the mind. In order to be free from these endless cycles, we must tune our mind to the body and love it as deeply as possible. We have to accept illness in all of its forms. We should accept it as part of our healing journey. Within every illness of the body, there lies a deep lesson to be learned. The deeper the illness, the more there is to be learned. The most debilitating diseases, such as severe depression, carry immense life realizations. The key here is to know deeply that the illness will pass. Because, such as every lesson has a beginning and an end, sickness has a beginning and an end. When there is no resonance between the body and the mind, then the only way our body can convey the message to the mind is through illness. It is a clear sign that the body is trying to tell us something, that maybe the time for change has come. The body is highly intelligent and in tune with our higher self, whereas the mind is not, so it will signal the mind if there is a misbalance of some sort. Our body can heal itself from every disease and can make way for every disease to develop as well. If the mind is so unwilling to change in order to facilitate a healthy body, our vehicle will make sure that the message is received. We then can begin to interpret disease as allowed by the body rather than inflicted externally, so the need for change becomes clear and evident to the mind. Of course, there are external sources of disease, but the actual manifestation is governed by the body itself. So listening to these signs is of most importance. If we choose not to listen, we choose to be disconnected. Being in tune and loving our body is the key. The most important ability of the mind is to be able to focus. A mind which is focused and awareness is at the point of focus is able to change reality itself. Energy flows where the focus is. This is the true power of the mind. Our daily life is governed by this ability. The interactions with others, the ability to channel art and express ourselves are all dependent on this. And whether through meditation, yoga, or practice, one should strive towards focusing the mind. In this way, we are channeling all of our potential towards our purpose. On the other hand, a mind which is not focused in the present and fluctuating will continuously drain energy away from the body. Awareness moves from one element of reality to another just as energy is only transformed but not lost or produced. If we are able to fully deploy our awareness to the process or activity we attend to, then nothing is unachievable. From the egoic perspective, this task is already completed. In that case, the awareness is already focused on the idea, or the association of the self. Then the mind is always focused. The energy is conserved. This is in place for most modern people. But what happens if this idea of the self is shattered, lost, or transformed? Well, that kind of focus is not present anymore. Then we begin anew. Then you might ask, isn't the ego providing us with a mind that is not fluctuating? When one is ever focused on the egoic self, all that will ever be of importance to him will be the false self. All that he or she will ever initiate will be towards justifying the existence of the egoic self. This will result into an experience based upon the principle of division, as the ego is the perception of separation itself. And this is what an unawakened mind is. If that is the case, then there has not been an awakening process yet. If the mind is always focused on the idea of the self, then the person will never be able to connect to the deeper self. If one is rather focused on love instead, then a deep connection is established. Divine love is beyond mental modifications. Your ability to focus the mind and awareness is equal to your ability to be present in the now. This focused state of mental energy is the normal state, but we become distracted and the flow is interrupted. Stillness of mind is necessary in order to achieve such a focus. When we live through the ego, our focus is always aimed towards the personal self, towards I. For a plain level of awareness, this will ensure a mind-focused state. But what about the mind which is not ever focused on the personal self? Is this awakening? When we are no longer only focused on the I, it is within our decision where to focus our energetic flow. We become the absolute creators of reality. Now the question arises, what does your mind focus on? We are not the thoughts, and we are not the image or projection of ourselves. We are not the mind. We are much more than that. We are the source of consciousness. Once we truly realize and embody the fundamental truth that we are the sky and thoughts are clouds passing by, and self-identification is just a tool, then we begin to operate on a higher vibrational level, the level of pure awareness and love. We become the painters, the artists of our own creation. This abandonment of self-association and mental modification is freedom. It is freedom from ego. Once this is achieved, there is no longer a dependency. There is only the experience of life and consciousness. One can illustrate this realization with the potentiometers of a radio. We, as the frequency of human consciousness, can dial up or down the potentiometers of self-association. For example, Dimitar, the musical artist man of No Ego, or Nikolai, the basketball player, or Vasil, the yogi and spiritualist. These are all mental modifications, and as such, can be further empowered or completely dissolved by the self, just as the radio can switch stations. Ego trip is not the issue here. The issue here is the ego trap, which is the complete association of the self with the ego. Once we come to this understanding, the question arises, who is creating these identifications? Is it the ego? The mind? The self? I, as an identification myself, cannot provide the answer for you. I can provide a vision only. The question, who am I, is the axe with which to cut off the ego. And this is an internal question. But just imagine for a moment the way of life devoid of identification, pure life experience, and flow. And ask yourself, is it possible? Is it possible to be immersed in life without self-associating? I believe it is. That, to me, is the man of no ego. Life is as it is. Our minds are the creators of drama. There is no drama. The challenges will always be there. But who is interpreting challenge as drama, and why? Which part of us prefers to skip the challenges of life? Well, it is only the ego that does not learn and expand from challenges. Ego does not have the capacity to learn and evolve. It simply acts. It simply inflates or deflates. On the other hand, our true self, as well as our bodies, has an immeasurable potential for expansion. On a physical level, one's body can be transformed completely by means of challenge and body work. The same can be said for the realization of the true self. By means of inner work and challenge, we can grow and expand in order to fully embrace the deeper self. When facing these challenges, we begin to tune in to the flow of life. Just like the flow of a wave, there will be ups and downs. This means that whenever you are presented with a tremendous challenge, eventually you will be presented with tremendous relief. When this principle is understood, challenges can be perceived as signs of upcoming relief rather than suffering. How we react to these situations of life is also very important. Our reactions are a release of energy. And the question is, do you want to release this energy? Maybe, maybe not. The immediate response to these obstacles is a testimony for one's level of balance. If we are centered enough, our response to the outer world will be in line with our deeper truth, even when life brings upon these hardships. The past is gone. So letting go is actually unburdening your mind from what is not now, from what is not real. By doing this, and leaving behind what is not needed, we begin to approach true stillness. Letting go is a state, and in that state, one is not clinging to the things of life. The person only experiences them in the present, but beyond that, they have no effect. He or she is not holding to anything. He or she is not counting on anything. Holding to and counting on are of the past and future. You cannot hold the present moment, and you cannot count on it. The present cannot be clinged to. It can be experienced only. And to do so fully requires complete stillness of mind. What you previously experienced and will experience is just a thought, and thus not the stillness. And how to get there? The mind cannot instruct itself to be still. This will never work. We can enter stillness of mind through the body and breath. Nothing is more calm than the present moment. No worries of the past, nor anxieties of the future. Calmness of mind is of the centered being. Because, as we already mentioned, mind is key. So if we choose to react negatively to the world, we miss out on the experience of the full wavelength, the lows and the highs, the negative and the positive. It is within stillness that we realize our wave position. Being still-minded allows for an expanded awareness, capable of such realization. And again, How do we calm the mind? By letting go. Of what? Everything. But if one lets go of everything, does he hold any value to the world? Yes, because your value is measured by every single action that you take in the present. Every reaction, every interaction, every expression of yours is what matters. The present is where you find your own value. I truly believe that there is a sense of peace and calmness in every one of us. It is inherent, and that peace is eternal. We can choose to remember the feeling of that state and reconnect to it at any given moment. Regardless of the state we are currently in, we have connection to what is deep within us, to that which is ever present. The true self emerges in inner peace and calmness. Any self-invoked stress or anxiety will push you away from it. Believe in the present moment. Have the courage to be in it and let go. Your intuition will carry you. Surrender to the ever-present and be. All cloudiness and negativity will eventually subside. A person who dwells in the now is fully engaged with life. To be fully engaged is to be ready to face everything that life has to offer. When we focus our mind on the past or future, we are missing out on life itself. But this doesn't mean that one should never dwell in past nostalgia or future anxieties. Again, it is within the balance of the states that we meet our true selves. But does this imply that one should monitor his own thoughts, or in other words, think about thoughts? No. Once known, one should always gravitate to the present state. Once experienced, one should always aim for it. And this is all internal. The switch can be made at any moment. You are yourself in the present moment only. With every moment past, you are a new version of you. Your past or future self is just a projection, but the true self, yourself, is now. So in other words, your expression of being is now, and it is expressed in what you do, how you act, and interact in this very moment. The realization of this reveals to the mind the possibility to define yourself in every moment. And as you begin to do so, you are less and less defined by the past or future. You begin to truly live, and not think about living instead. So in this line of thought, it is important to be aware of the way you react and treat other beings in the present as well. Do not base your relationship with other beings based on your past trauma or future anxieties. There is no such relationship. Base it on the fundamental truth that we are all interconnected and of the same source, which is manifesting in the eternal now. Because that is all there is. The past and future are just a projection. They are non-existent. If you are able to be fully aware in the present, then you can begin to read the signs of life. The signs of life are the signs of the body and the signs of nature and animals. And nature is constantly speaking to us. With every bird's whisper and every crack of the woods, it is speaking to our heart. Shamans are able to tune into these signs, and it only requires a certain sensitivity which is inherent to us all. But we have severed that connection. We have lost that sensitivity. This is the result of the endless cycles, or in other words, the complete association with I. And only by letting go or unassociating can we start the process of rebuilding this connection. Every one of us can connect to nature and begin to build a relationship with it. One can actually feel pure, unconditional love in its presence. Being in tune with nature allows for a deep healing process to occur in the body. The most literal example would be allergies can be cleansed. For what is an allergy but a deep disconnect from an aspect of nature, the allergen? Most of us live in a sort of self-defined artificial bubble, or in other words, disconnected from reality, and reconnecting is the path of no ego. When we truly connect with nature, our whole perspective on life changes. Nature is source. It is the source of all living beings on this planet. We need to reconnect and become the two-legged stewards of the planet. Our bodies have a natural rhythm tuned to nature's cycles, the sunrise and sunset. It is within this rhythm that hormones are released, and thus waking up according to it is very beneficial. If a person wakes up at the end of the cycle, he will be rested and energized. If he doesn't, even though he has slept for hours and hours, he will feel as if he hasn't slept enough. Human beings are deeply reliant on the sun. We can tell our bodies when to wake up from sleep, or in other words, the mind can instruct the body. It is always listening, and what we are saying to it is very important. We can observe and learn from animals. Animals are not led by their thoughts. They are led by their instincts. The thought does not precede the action. Therefore, they are actually led by their intuition, as intuition only happens in the immediate moment, whereas thought is the future or past. Animals rely on the sensory input of the present moment. For the next moment, the sensory input is different. They do not plan or think, they are fully aware of what is. With humans, it is quite the opposite. As our awareness is broader in a sense, our sensory input and intuition need to be processed by the mind. The input needs to be questioned and approved by the mind before we can act upon it, and thus the body-mind connection is corrupted. This is a form of disconnect from the present moment. But we can learn to be like the animals. We can learn from them as they can learn from us. This is evolution. To think that we are more or less than the animals is just another ego trap. We are all one, and we come from source. But we are different, and we can learn from our differences. As part of these signs of life, our body speaks to us. We are being given signals all throughout the day, and our bodies are far more intelligent than our minds. The body is the vehicle of life, functioning on many levels, almost incomprehensible to the mind. And we take it as granted. We believe that the body is there to serve us, to serve our minds. Well, that's what the ego tells us. But if we separate ourselves from mind, we realize that we are the self, not the mind. And from that perspective, we begin to treat the body as the receiver of self. We begin to truly love and take care of it. We begin to listen carefully to every signal the body is sending and deeply addressing it. Indigenous people of the planet have developed a strong connection between the body and the mind. We as modern people have lost it. But we can regain it. That is the point we are making. For indigenous people, the posture, for example, is of big importance. Their body is a symbol of power and a representation of energy. Poor body posture can cripple the energetic flow, as well as the body-mind connection. And sitting for long periods of time is indeed very detrimental, as we are not designed to be stagnant. Once we establish such connection and connect the body and mind, we truly become an avatar of ourselves, rather than an universal occurrence. And then, the present moment begins to guide us. We are in resonance with life, and the immediate moment becomes available to us, rather than being veiled and obscured. In other words, you let go of the need to think or plan or conceptualize your next action. This will come naturally. you are in complete connection with life and its only real manifestation, the now, the flow. Internal is eternal. The mind wants us to believe that we are finite, that we are temporary, and once we die, existence is over. But that is untrue. When we go to sleep and our body is shut down, our inner self does not cease to exist. Furthermore, it begins to expand to other dimensions through dreaming. So when we let go of the external world and fall asleep, in a sense, we are practicing death. And when we wake up, in a sense, we are being reborn. But what is a dream? A dream is a connection to a parallel reality of the inner self. Could be future, past, or any kind of manifestation of reality. And the dream is real. Very often we experience dreaming through our bodies more than through our minds. Our body reacts as if the dream is real, and we have to remember that our bodies are more intelligent than we think. And remember, thinking is of the mind and feeling is of the body. But why are we making such a connection? Is it because there is a message for our deeper self? Might be. The sleep state is the state of no ego. And the dream state is the state of no mind. In our dreams, we experience ourselves as a form of awareness rather than a mental association. We experience the reality of the dream without the mental involvement. The mind is actually asleep. If only we were able to be completely absorbed in the current reality while in the waking state. And we are, but we're distracted by the mind. What is the message then? Upon waking from the dream, we try to process the experience through the mind. Dreams convey information which is broader than what the human mind is capable of perceiving. That is why you, as a self-association, would hardly make sense out of these images. But the deeper self will. The act of praying is extremely powerful. Prayer can be seen as the mind to higher self-connection. It truly is a gift to humanity. We can use it to put into reality our deepest intentions. When we truly pray, we let go. So in a sense, praying is an act of letting go and allowing. We then remove ourselves in order to allow for the deepest intention to manifest. If we are still holding to expectations and our conditioning, then the prayer is meaningless. If we let go of them, then the prayer is meaningful. A prayer can be aimed towards a higher symbol or understanding. Ultimately, if we aim towards God, then we're actually praying to ourselves. Because God is the self, and we as human beings are the expression of God. Fundamentally, it does not matter whether we are aimed towards Jesus, Buddha, Gauranga, or Muhammad. We are aiming at the same source. There is no division. We can create our own prayers or mantras. The mantra should come from the heart and not from the mind. Mantra is a form of direct connection to Source, and our minds do not have the capacity to comprehend Source in its whole. On the other hand, our hearts have this capacity. When we chant a prayer, the feeling of connection and love is manifested. Based on this connection, we can confirm that the mantra is matching for us. In my life experience, the following mantras have made their connection with me. I am grateful for the love I am being given. I am not afraid. I love you all. I am love. I am much more than my physical appearance. I am grateful that everything is all right. I love you. The mind is always trying to understand and explain the elements of life. This way there is no uncertainty, no possibility for change. That kind of safety is good for the mind. But music is one thing that the mind cannot explain. It's beyond understanding, beyond the mind. It is intangible and comes from a place unknown that cannot be fully defined. Our minds are so compelled by this phenomenon that they will try to explore it by connecting to the sound vibrations and thus letting go. The listening experience then becomes a form of no mind. Music cannot be felt or perceived by the mind. It is a direct connection to the heart, and since it is only manifested in the now, a direct connection to the present as well. That is why creating music from the mind will never work well. The result will be a combination of sounds with no depth or musicality. So eventually, we come to the understanding that the more ego we put in, or in other words, the more we cling to the outcome of creation, the less space for artistic expression to actually come through. It is truly a channeling experience, both creating and listening. So music is a form of relief from the ego. When we write music, we are connecting to a deeper place. If we let go of the mind, magic can truly happen. The whole process of music making is a mystery to me still. We are channelers in this sense, and we distort and color the channel with our own self. But we should not confuse this coloring as an indication that music is to be possessed. Ultimately, music is no one's, and cannot be either fully comprehended nor owned. In this book, yoga is mentioned a few times already. I would like to share my experience on the topic. It is an ancient method for achieving the highest state of body-mind connection, and a way of attaining the self. Yoga translates to union, the merging of all. It is a path to the selfless self, the true I, a path to self-inquiry. In its essence, yoga combines elements such as movement, breathing, focus, sense withdrawal, meditation, stillness, selfless practice, and self-realization. In my personal experience, yoga has become a fundamental element of expansion. The deeper one goes into practice, the more one realizes the existence of no mind and stillness. This stillness of mind is essential for the path of no ego. And as we already stated, the state of no ego brings upon healing and the natural tendency of being, joy and bliss. It is a doorway for each individual to experience a glimpse of the true self, the undivided self. Yoga has become an integral part of my life experience, and as such has allowed me to serve and share love and light through sharing my practice with others. When we practice, we share a sacred moment of inner peace and love. We practice letting go and opening the door for our highest self to enter. I would like to welcome anyone reading this book to be open-hearted towards this ancient teaching and potentially adhere to it. Chapter 4: Energy and Food. Energy is the main currency for human beings. There are many forms of energy. Every moment of our lives, we are exchanging it with others and with life itself. Let us divide human energy into 3 domains. For example, physical energy, mental energy, sexual energy. As we already discussed, balance is key. If one domain is lacking or depleted, the others will have to compensate. They are all interconnected as well. Balancing them out is not an easy task, but it is the path of connecting with yourself. For example, a person who is exercising and eating well will never perform to his physical maximum if the mental energy domain is being drained. Or a person who does not adhere to his sexual energy would not be able to achieve his highest mental potential. And by adhere to his sexual energy, we do not imply participation in sexual activity. Quite the opposite. So, understanding this multi-layered nature of our energy is fundamental. Energy is always flowing from one state to another. It is not stagnant. It flows from one person to another as well. So if we are unaware and do not cultivate it, we can become depleted. How do we cultivate energy? It is within the realization that we can control our energy exchange with the world. With every expression, we are releasing or taking in energy. And it is our decision whether we dance, laugh, love, fear, work, talk, etc. So ask yourself the questions: do I want to release this energy? Do I want to open myself to this incoming energy? Be aware, even one spoken sentence coming from the inner self may be life-changing to others, as it is a true exchange of energy and expression of the self. That is the type of energetic interplay that we want to aim towards and be aware of. Our mind requires energy in order to process thoughts. When the mind is in constant demand of such energy, the body becomes lacking and a misbalance between the mental and physical domain is created. It is within the stillness of the mind where this balance lies. We are not implying here that thoughts are to be avoided. They do not require anything. They just simply come into our awareness. It is the processing and association with the thought itself that requires energy. This is the main energy leak for modern day people. Thoughts can be allowed into our awareness without the attachment, without the processing. That is the point here. Then they become just like clouds passing by, and we, the sky. From the energetic point of view, shared love is truly a miracle. It is an infinite loop of energy between two beings. It has the potential to bring balance to the domains and bring the person to self-realization. The merging of the two, or the sexual act, is the pinnacle. But sexual practice will either drain or generate energy from or for the body as well. For a male, the act of ejaculation on a physical level will drain energy from the body. This is why one should be mindful of this act. There are ways, both male and female, of having sexual experience without this type of energetic release, and still maintain the desired outcome and experience. If that is the case, we are cultivating energy. We should become aware that sexual energy is the fundamental driving force in our co-created existence. Energy can be generated in the body in various ways. We do not need to rely only on food intake. For example, walking barefoot, grounding yourself, or sun gazing. Sun gazing is a method of staring directly at the sun during sunrise or sunset. While practicing this, sunlight enters and invigorates the body with energy. The energy of the sun is the primordial source. The same process occurs when we look at the stars at night. Starlight enters the body. Maybe that is why, while staring at the night sky, we feel as if we are not alone, as if we are nourished by something beyond ourselves. This gazing at the stars is not something silly that only children attend to. It is a process of receiving energy. And as we said before, children are deeply connected. it is important to mention here that all artificial lights are detrimental to this process. One should be aware that these lights actually take away energy. Physical energy is the body's main currency. It is fluctuating. We can decide how to energize our bodies with it, whether through food, practice, meditation, breathing. We can invigorate the body. Being mindful of one's diet is fundamental, as food will either drain or generate energy within the body. That is why in the following parts, I would like to dive into the topic of food. Good food is the best medicine you'll ever need. Our bodies create and build life from food. The more dead a food is, the more energy your body will invest in the process of creating life from it. Food is health, and the body-mind connection depends on it. Our vessel needs to be healthy in order to facilitate the inner spirit and allow for it to reside there. Food is medicine, but most of us treat it wrongly, as a source of pleasure, as a source of relief. When we have emotions that are undealt with, such as anger, envy, fear, and doubt, we use food to suppress them deeper. We're afraid to fully face them. As these emotions continue to take away our energy and the mind is overloaded, we reach for food in order to receive some form of energy back. This should not be the way. We should rather treat food as a blessing and be thankful for it. Bless your food, invigorate it, focus your awareness into it. Transform the process of food consumption into a ritual of gratitude. This way you bless yourself as food becomes your body. When we are thankful for the food, we are in the center, balanced. And being thankful cannot stem from the ego. So in that state, we are channeling our deeper self. To be able to bless is a true gift that human beings possess. In that state, the mind is directed towards love and appreciation. That is what blessing is. This is one good example of how the mind can be used in a beneficial way, creating a strong body-mind connection. By blessing your food, you invest energy in yourself. Human prayer is powerful. We have the potential to cleanse our bodies and cleanse the food as well. If we consider our being as divine, then our body becomes the temple of the divine. In such a space, there is no place for low vibrational energy, or in other words, one should always consider the kind of food that is entering the body. We should make sure to supply our body with organic and nutritious foods. The most nourishing types of foods are the ones containing life force. There is no right or wrong type of food. We must rather gravitate towards foods which are highly vibrational instead of ones which are non-vibrational. Without being instructive, the foods which are non-vibrational are, for example, overcooked, fried, refrigerated, processed, refined, or imbued with bad intentions. The foods which are highly vibrational are live, raw, enzymatic, freshly cooked, and germinated. If after eating a certain food our energy is being drained, then the food is requiring more energy than it is supplying. The body will indicate if that food is not right for us. It is up to us to listen to the signs. And it's simple. We need to be working together with the body. In order to fully process the energy from the food, one should only eat when the body indicates. And each one of us has a unique reception system for food. We should investigate which food is acceptable for us and which is not. The body will tell us. We need to be deeply in tune with it. And once we have that intuitive connection, there is no place for compromise. Refined foods, such as white sugar, are artificially modified by human beings. They are no longer in the form that nature intended them to be. There is no other species on the planet that consumes refined and processed foods except for humans, and there is no other species on the planet that suffers from such a variety of bodily disease except for humans. When we consume these foods, we are distorting our natural state, as this food is unnatural in itself. Blood sugar rises unnaturally, and then the body reacts, which creates the detrimental cycle. In such a cycle, after a meal, one is more tired than before the meal. This is undoubtedly an indication that this kind of food is detrimental to health. And even though this process is slow in fruition, nevertheless it is detrimental. Again, no other species on planet Earth will survive if after consuming food they are depleted and drained. This is a human phenomenon and a result of the consumption of unnatural, processed foods. One might argue that this is evolution itself, but then obesity, diabetes, severe tooth decay, and other diseases are also a direct result of this evolution. So then, is it really evolution? White refined sugar has become a staple of modern-day people. It is a synthetic food which is not naturally found in nature and thus damaging to the body. It does not contain any valuable nutritional elements, and as such, it actually drains them from the body. White sugar is acidic in nature and does not work well for an alkaline-based diet and body, if that is the case. By feeding oneself with refined sugar, you are feeding microorganisms that thrive on sugar, which are detrimental, such as candida, dental bacteria, yeast, and fungus. Addiction to this substance can be a serious obstacle towards achieving the balanced state of being. Sugar does supply the body with a sense of relief and sensory satisfaction, but it is mainly used to suppress emotions, usually negative ones, and thus a destructive cycle is formed. The key here is to be in tune with the body. We need to be listening carefully. Consuming food is mainly intended for the sustainment of the body and its functions. The higher self does not rely on such sources of energy, and why would we ever listen to our minds when it comes to the food that we integrate in ourselves? It is because our ego is always trying to achieve the goal. Our self-association is always trying to sustain and propagate itself. And if that means eating low vibrational, heavily processed foods or avoiding physical activity, then that is what the mind will tell us to continue doing. What we eat becomes a part of us, and we become what we eat. If someone consumes a plant, or an animal, for example, he or she becomes like the plant or animal. The essence of that which is consumed is merged with the consumer. There are deeper characteristics as well. When we eat a fruit, the fruit becomes us. So the question is, which food will build life for us? We want to build rather than destroy. As we've already discussed, there are foods which will destroy life in us. Well, there is no ultimate answer for everyone. The answer should lie somewhere within our own innate intelligence. Our modern diets are based on taste and not on nutrition and health. We assume that if the food tastes good, it is good food. But that is not always true. Food is health, and a major part of us are not functioning to our maximum health potential. We must treat food as medicine. If we only consume by taste, we would be naturally drawn to eat more sweet foods and avoid bitter tasting ones. That in itself is a step away from the healthy state. Indigenous peoples' diets are something to consider. They have survived throughout the tests of time following their own relationship with food. They have delivered generations of offspring. If we observe such diets, we find that there is no artificial processing, refining, or chemical treatment being applied. They do not modify what was given by nature. The modern-day, heavily processed diet is an unprecedented experiment taking place for the last 40 to 50 years of human evolution. In this experiment, we can eat whatever we want, coming from all parts of the planet, regardless of time of year and season. But seasonal eating is a normal and healthy process. So what will this experiment conclude? I would encourage you to not be a part of it. Generally, we do not need to consume so much food. One should inquire one's true self when taking the decision whether to consume food or not. If we do, we burden our body with digestive processes. Nutritional food or natural food will be more than enough eaten once or twice a day. Immediately after a meal, one's energy should always remain stable. If the energy is drained and the food requires too much processing, most probably it is not a match for you. Being hungry is actually a healthy state. Eating too often is not. The fasting state has a cleansing effect on the human body. When in this state, one's body is not receiving food and the negative elements such as parasites are not fed as well. Dead cells are processed. The body finally receives the much needed rest from digestion. So fasting, if driven by the deeper self, can actually generate energy in the body, rather than leave the body depleted. This process has been part of people's lives all throughout history, as there were periods of lack and periods of abundance. We must become our own physicians and chemists and nurture our bodies according to the information that the body provides. Current prescription medicine does not work well. It prescribes a cure for symptoms, but not a cure for the root cause. And people are being treated as if their bodies are completely the same, but in fact we're all different. We're the compilation of our unique life accumulation and physical attributes. For one's body, one diet might work very well, but for another, it might not. We are not the same. In general, we must make sure that we consume high life force foods. The more certain food is processed and decayed, the more energy it requires for the body to build life from it. These kinds of food have less life force to offer to our bodies. And foods which do not contain any life force in them are just an exercise for the stomach and the cleaning agents of our bodies, bacteria, parasites. We are one with our internal bacteria. Our mood, our thoughts, our immune system, our digestion are all interdependent on them. Without these organisms, our bodies would cease to function. On a physical level, we experience life through this symbiotic relationship. Fundamentally, the types of bacteria that we harness determine our experience of life. There are beneficial and non-beneficial types of bacteria coexisting within us. The non-beneficial ones have a deep connection to our body and mind. In some cases, they protect us and make sure we are able to process certain chemicals and foreign substances. One might say, well, then they are beneficial. Yes, but only if the body is acidic and compromised, only when foreign chemicals are reduced internally. Otherwise, they are of no service. In that case, they feed off of our energy and are truly a parasite to us. Such organisms have an effect on the body and mind, resulting in a clouded perception of reality. They can trigger different kinds of cravings, such as food, sex, violence, and self-abuse. When we succumb to these signals, we lower our vibration. That is what these organisms would want to achieve. When the body is in such low vibrational state, they can exist. When the body is in balance, they cannot continue to exist. The overgrowth of these kinds of organisms in the body will result into a form of tunnel vision, where we are excluding most of the sensory input and having a focus only on ourselves as a separate entity. In other words, we are being desensitized towards reality. So we need to be deeply in love with our bodies. We are not the body, we are not the mind, but we need to be grateful for both of them. All of us possess a form of self-hate and masochism, Abusing the body with harmful substances is only one example. The question here is, why are we abusing the body when intuitively we know that we are harming ourselves? It is as if we want to destroy ourselves. But why? The mind can be the only cause for this. The body would never want to abuse itself. We need to treat the body as the temple of God. There is no other way, no compromise. It is such a blessing to have a healthy and vibrant body. It is a miracle of life. We need to take care of it, nurture it, love it, and be thankful, even though the ego might want us to believe otherwise. Air is a form of energy that all of us rely on. The quality of air is of utmost importance. Air is the basic need for human beings. If there were only two substances in this manifestation that would be sufficient for the restoration of the body, that would be pure oxygen and pure water. But in this state of human evolution, finding a place to live with pure air is not an easy task. With every breath we take, we are breathing in foreign chemicals, exhausts, fumes, etc. And the body needs to be able to deal with these pollutants, otherwise we will become intoxicated. When the environment lacks clean air, the body will require a steady intake of dense food in order to build its defenses. That is not the normal state, so the quality of air affects our need to eat. If we switch to an environment with pure oxygen, this requirement will no longer be needed. We will eat less and feel at our highest potential. The easiest way to improve one's vibrancy and health will be to settle in an environment with pure, clean air. Polluted air is acidic in nature. If we are exposed to it, we become acidic. An acidic body will stimulate the growth of detrimental microorganisms, which thrive in an acidic environment, such as Candida, H. pylori, dental caries, bacteria, etc. When they are allowed to overgrow, we acquire diseases such as obesity, digestive disorders, and tooth decay. This should never be the normal state. It is the state of debilitation on many levels. So fundamentally, until the environment is changed, diseases will continue to manifest in our bodies. No medicine will be able to substitute the lack of purity of this fundamental energy. Let us make a parallel with the element of water. All that we have discussed regarding air can be applied to water as well. We are water. It is the second most important form of energy intake for human beings. If we drink poor, chemically treated water, we are chemically treating ourselves. And all living beings use and are connected with this form of energy. Without water, there's no life. We as humans are comprised of 50 to 60% water. It holds information, and that is why blessing and being thankful for it is the key. Our bodies are electrical conductors. Our brain functions with electrical impulses, and our cells require voltage to sustain life. When we drink high vibrational, natural water, we provide the body with conductivity, and thus the whole system is energized. As we stated, water holds memory and vibration, and can be invigorated in the same manner as food. So bless your water, be thankful for it, as it is a precious gift from nature. Sun, air, and water are the sources of life. We need to embrace them and trust in their transformative power. In the modern day age that we live in, toxicity is unavoidable. Toxicity of food, of air, of water. What happens as a result of this is that we accumulate toxicity into our tissues during our lifespan. Well, let us look at children, as they have not yet been exposed extensively to this kind of toxicity. Children are happy and blissful, sad and unhappy. They express the full spectrum of emotions, and we attribute this to the fact that they have not grown up yet. But what exactly does this grown up mean? It could mean a buildup of emotional armoring. Or is it that the body of a child has not accumulated enough toxicity yet? It is clean and empty, especially the brain. Built-up toxicity in the body results in a suppression of emotions and expression. When the body is compromised, pure expression is compromised. The body is no longer clean and functional and can hardly conduct high vibrational expressions such as joy and bliss. Then the inherent bliss and joy are replaced by conditional joy, a dependency towards an exterior source. And life slowly becomes a competition between one another for this conditional state, rather than a co-creation of bliss. That is what modern day people mean by grown up or growing up. So yet again, this is all to do with the environment we choose for our life experience. So fundamentally, emotional freedom is blocked by the toxicity of the body. My deepest intention is to spread the message that we as adults and our children can express the full spectrum of life's expressions and emotions. Complete freedom and release. We are the same. There is no such thing as grown up. Laughter, playfulness, vulnerability, openness, lightheartedness, bliss, joy, etc. are the normal expressions of an adult. We should not settle with a shortened range of emotions, or that which is considered adult behavior. This is the key. As we get older, we accumulate the toxicity that is surrounding us. Electronic radiation, synthetic food, polluted air and water. If the body is placed in such an environment, it will never truly cleanse. What will happen is the body will continue to store and accumulate so the vital functions can be preserved. A complete release of all the stored toxicity could result even in death for the body. But when we are in a pristine environment, the body uses this chance to detoxify, to start the restorative process. This can create a feeling of heaviness as toxins are released in the bloodstream. Then the whole experience of being in nature, for example, in this divine environment, is perceived by the ego as not having a profound effect. But it is quite the opposite. The effect is deeply profound. The effects are beyond healing, and such processes require a long period of time in order to completely restore the body. When the body is finally purified, life in a toxic environment where the fundamental elements, air, sun, water, and food, are compromised will be unacceptable. This would result in a permanently agitated nervous system. If that is the case, complete purity and stillness of mind will be unachievable. When the body is finally cleansed, toxins will be able to penetrate more easily as the protective layer is no longer needed. The clean body is the vessel of God and is incompatible with a low vibrational polluted surrounding. So in this current state, detoxification of the body is a fundamental step towards stillness of mind and balance. This is the evolutionary step that we face. Cleaning the body from accumulated toxicity will allow for a clearer experience of life. If our inner urge is to connect to the divine and reveal the true nature of ourselves, we need to love our body and transform it into the temple of God. Closing words. My deepest intention is to convey the message that we as divine beings are capable of all there is. We are the miracle. Life is a miracle. and there are many ways of experiencing life. My humble suggestion for you is to experience it with an open heart, with a loving heart. Only then will the doors truly open, and the light will enter. The deepest of desires will manifest. Embracing love and letting go is the truth, and ego is a tool. We are created in such a way. We need not destroy it. The key here is to accept it, but understand deeply that you are not that. You are the universe experiencing itself. You are God. And we are not just the idea of ourselves. Life teaches us that this idea is bound to change, that it is not our true source of self and not permanent within us. What is permanent within ourselves is the divine. Love. About the author. Most of you might know Man of No Ego via the musical albums Web of Life and Blinkers Removed. As an artist and an ambassador of love, I, Dimitar Petrov, came to writing as another form of channeling. This is my first experience writing a book. I was born the 12th of July, 1989 in Sofia, Bulgaria. Started playing guitar at age 18, which led me to believe that music is the most important thing in my life. This realization helped me a lot with finding my purpose. I got into all sorts of rock genre music, but mainly alternative and progressive, bands like Radiohead, Pink Floyd, and early Muse. Then came the first song of the ambient genre that I was sent to listen to. Carbon-based life forms, proton-electron. It felt like the music contained a whole unexplored world on its own, a world which felt close to me, as if the music put a spell on me. I had the urge to do something about it. Then I went on listening artists such as Solar Fields, Asura, Vibrosphere, which shaped my main musical influences. This is when I was introduced to my first psychedelic experience. Then the doors of perception were opened, in a sense. I could point out the Israeli artist Metamorphosis as the first person believing in the music and encouraging me to continue producing. Writing ambient music is magical enough, but the idea to combine it with messages from teachers, such as Alan Watts, Osho, etc., sounded like a promise for the future. I've always wanted to convey these teachings to as many people as possible. They contain universal truths which could affect people's lives in a profound way. If that occurs, then my mission is completed. My dream now is to combine music, yoga, and knowledge into one unified vision. You can find me teaching yoga classes in Sofia. I would be glad to meet you. Let us connect at www.facebook.com/manofnoegoyoga. The music, manofnoego.bandcamp.com. One last thing. If you want to support me as a person, the book, or the message, please do write a review about the book at amazon.com. Blessings.